Alright, so welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, we're trying to build a very simple app using Flask and then Python. So we're building a password manager, and then we'll be using the same app we're building to explore the CRUD approach, right? Create, read, update, delete. So we're trying to build a simple CRUD app that is going to be used for managing our password. Very nice. So let's explore the app. So if I come back here, I have the option of entering the email. So email example, then I'll just go with my @gmail.com, right? Then I'm going to pass in the site, so example.com. Then I'll pass in my password, right? If I click on add, it's going to add the password to our app here, and you can actually see the password I just entered. If I click on show password, consider the password has been unhidden or be made visible. The same way I can also do the same thing for here, right? I can also delete or update the password, so let's update it. I'll be sent to this particular place, and I can update something. So let's say I want to update this one from 1234 to 0000, and then I can save it. If I go back here now, if I check what I updated, and I go back to the show, consider the password now is 000. You can also delete, and you can also export it. If I go with export, it's going to export the entire password for me, right, in this particular option. Very nice. So that is a very simple app we're trying to build, which explores the create, read, update, delete option. So let's see how to build a simple app from scratch, right? Okay, so I'm just going to go back again to my workspace, and then we're going to spin up a new workspace for that. So let's go back here. This is the old app that was running. I'm going to stop it. So let's stop this one, and then let's get out of here, right? And now let's create our app. So back again, yeah, and then I'm going to create a folder called password app. Let's go password app, and I'll move into my password app, not pass master but password app. Seed into password underscore app, yeah. And there's nothing here, so I'm going to create two folders. So directory for the templates, and then another one for the static folder, right? If I go back and I check it out, you have the static and then the template. Perfect. That is a big understanding. Now it is advisable that when you are building an app, you create a virtual environment. So let's create a virtual environment. So it's going to be Python -m. You can use virtual venv or pipenv. So -m, then venv, then I can give it a name. So let's put as my environment, right, or my virtual venv. So it's going to be the name of the virtual environment, right? It's going to take some time for it to spin. So the basic understanding or the basic idea behind the app is that we are going to have a session to receive input from the user, and a session behind the scene to store whatever is being inputted into the database. And then we'll be using the create, read, update, delete approach, whereby we will create, we will be able to read it or view it, be able to make some changes and do some addition or editing, and then we can be able to delete it. So let's go back again, and let's see if everything is working. Just better. In case you have any question or contribution, you can put inside the comment section below, and let me know your opinion about the audio, right? Perfect. So that's finished. Now if I go back here, you can see I just created this folder called my venv, which is this particular one. If I move into my venv, you can see we have a script file. So inside this script is where we can use to activate it. So if I call this activate or activate.bat or activate.psl for PowerShell, I'll be able to activate the entire virtual environment, and also do the same thing for the activation, right? And I can also install packages with the pip here. So let's go back and get out of here, and I'm going to go back to the same place I have, so into my and then to my script. Then I'm going to call the activate option. So now it is giving us this error. So why is this giving us this error? This is because of my setting. I need to allow some policies. So let's fix that policies option with this option, right? So set execution policy unrestricted. This is only for Windows, not for in case you are working on Macintosh. And now I can run this, and then my virtual environment has been activated. So let's install the packages we will be using. So pip install, be using Flask, SQLAlchemy, and then you also be using cryptography, right, to help us with our encryption. Cryptography, right? So this is another part of the app in case you want to use encryption for the app. Takes some time for it to install, and then after that's finished installing, we're going to start writing some code. Okay, so that's finished, right? So now that's finished. If I go back here, everything has been installed. Now let's open with Sublime. You can use VS Code in case you want, but I prefer Sublime. I'm going to open with Sublime test, and now let's create a file. And then inside my app, which is here, we have my password app. Then I'm going to create a file called app.py, right? This is going to be the backend. Then I'm going to create another one for the index.html inside my template, and then also create another one for the update where we can be able to make updates. So updates.html. Perfect. So we have two files. So we have the index.html, we have the updates, and we have the backend, the app. So let's start working with it. So from Flask, let's import Flask, and also need to import render template to help us with rendering of our files, the HTML files, and then also need to import request to make request, and then we also need to import URL for, and then redirect for working with our routes, right, in our direction. Perfect. So that is the basic understanding. Now let's initialize our app. So app, initialize the app as Flask, then I'm going to initialize it with this option, and everything is going to go here. So all the app, everything that is going to be working is going to go between the app and then the main here. So let's change it from main to app.run. Then with this call, this function call, be able to run the app. So you can put your port here in case you want to deploy it, but for now let's go with debug. It's called to true. This is for only development purpose, right? So let's go to for dev. So in case you are doing production, you have to do production, you have to set it to true, to false, right, in case it's production. Perfect. Now let's build our first route. So it's going to be our route. The first route is going to be my decorator. So app.route. Then I'm going to go with my base route or my home route, right, my index. So in this case, it's going to be \, yeah, then def index. Then now I can just put in my stuff. So I can just return something. So let's return something simple to make sure that's working. So hello world, right? So this is going to be our read option, right? Now let's go to hello world. Now we also need some other routes. As we are following the CRUD, we have CRUD to be creating and reading in the index for, and then also be working with the update and then delete. So we need to create another option to update and then delete, right, and also to create. So let's go back again, and then I'll create one for that. So let me copy this one here to save us time. We're going to have one for the create, one for the update, and one for the delete. So this is going to be for the create. So we can call it as, let's say, add details. So I'll just change it here to add or create, right? Add is more interesting. And the next one is going to be update, in case you want to update something. So update details, and I'll call it as update here. And then the next one is going to be for my delete. This is going to be called delete details. So delete _ details, right? So that is the basic understanding behind it. So we have all the basic routes. Okay, so let's make sure that the app is working before we move on to anything. So I'll go back again to my workspace, and I can run it with Python, then app.py, and it's going to run this particular app, spin it up for us. Hopefully it doesn't give us any error. Perfect. So it's running on this app, on this spot, so I can just copy this spot here. Just cancel, and then I can copy this spot here. So if I go back into my browser, so this is a port. So if I refresh it, it's going to give us the hello world, right? Hello world. So let me position it beside it. Have it hello world here. Perfect. Now that is good. We can also work on the rest. So let's work on the other aspect of the app. Since we are working with a database, we need to be able to have a place to receive input from the user. So I can see it well as always. Yeah. So now let's change it from this to an index.html file, right? So this is going to be render template. I'll pass in my index.html, so index.html. So this index.html is from here, and then the app is going to look into this template folder for the file called index.html and then render it, right? So render template is going to look into this template. The naming must be template, and then it's going to render it here. Everything that is inside on that. So I go back here, let's create a simple HTML, and then let's call it as my password manager, right? Right, something very simple. And now with this, we can now put in some stuff. So let's be using Bootstrap to make our work easy. So I'll go back again to Bootstrap. So Bootstrap to get the Bootstrap URL. This is it. Copy this one here. We are building everything from scratch. You can use npm, but let's go with the CDN. So this is what we need. So I'll copy this one here, and then I'll go back and paste it here. Yeah, right. And I'll do the same thing for the script. You have to make sure that you have internet. I'll come down here and then I'll paste it here, right? So now we can use Bootstrap in our app. So let's first create our first div. Let's class container, and then let's give it a simple header, right? So you can just go back again and create header 1, and let's call it out to say password manager app. So I save it and I go back here and I refresh it. Now the hello world is going to change to password manager, right? As you can see, everything is working as expected. So Bootstrap is working behind the scene to give us the nice feature. Okay, so we need a form. So let's add some simple div to give it a form. So let's go with this option, the div class container, and I'm going to pass in my form. So let's go with a simple form. So inside this form, we are going to have some stuff that is going to be used to give us our details. I'll build a basic, and then we move on to add the features to it, right? The other stuff. So this is going to be my input type. The first one is going to be the email, and then I have to change the name. So this name here is whatever I'm going to be typing inside this input will be attached to this name variable here. So let's go to as email, and now I can just go with placeholder. Let's go to as email. So if I save it and I refresh, so we have the email here. This is where we'll be typing our stuff, right? So whatever is going to be typed here will be attached to this name here, right? Then we'll do the same thing for the remaining ones. Then you beautify them later on. So you can also add a class of form control. Yeah, this is something you can do later. So class form control. So I save it and I refresh. We have it in a different format, right? With a Bootstrap feature applying to it. So you can also put a label in case you want. So let's change it from this to there. First one is the email. The second one is going to be the username. So let's go with test, and then this we call it as the site URL, right? And I'll call it as my site URL, or the address of the site. If I save it and I come back here, we have this one and this one. Now we need to move on down and then do the same thing for this one. We have one for the password I'll change the type to password, and this is very important, right? If I make it as test, and then I'll change this one to site password, so site, let's go password, and this is going to be your password. If I save it and I come back here, refresh it, if I type in something, you can see it, right? This is not the best. You need to make sure that somebody cannot see your password, so I have to fix it by changing the type to password. And once I do that, if I refresh it, if I type something, you can't see it, you only see the dot, right? So you have to unhide this one later. So let's add a form control to this one too. So class form control, so we have that feature around it, right? So we have gotten the email, the site, and then the password. We also need a button, so let's go with this option. We will beautify it later, so don't worry. So let's go to break, and then let's give it as the button. So be given a button, so this is going to be the button we are passing, the button, and let's call that button as, say, add, right? Yeah, something very simple. The class is going to be, you can give it a particular class, right? For, let's say, btn outline primary. Hopefully I still remember my stuff. Yeah, it's not working because of the spelling of primary. Save it, let's refresh. Yeah, we have it here, right? So I've gotten a password. You can also add breaks for these ones. You can just use def in case you want input labels so that it looks nicer. Yeah, so let me expand it. Perfect, right? We will reduce it later, so this is just the basics to get the logic working. Perfect. Okay, now we have gotten the form. Now we also need to be able to get the results. So we have gotten the email, site name, password. Now let's send it to the backend. So I'll save this one for the front end here, and I have to create a route. So the method is going to be post, and then the action, which is going to be the route, it is going to, I'm going to set it as to the add option, right? So add, so it's going to go, whatever I'm going to be typing here will be attached to this variable names here, right? And then it will be sent via post to this particular route. So if I go back here, there's a route, so you have to create this route, and this route is taking a method. So methods, the method is going to be two methods, which is going to be for the get, and then it can also be only just one method, and it's post. Right? Post, perfect. And now I'm going to say that, okay, if the request dot method is equal to post, I want you to do something. What do I want you to do? I want you to pick whatever button that is coming here. So pick the email, so email, and let's go to request dot form. That is, pick the form. This is a form, this is a form, right? Pick the form and pick the name here, email, right? So form, this is going to be called email. Then I'll do the same thing for the rest. So let me duplicate this. So we have one for the site name, then I'll just go with this, so site URL, right? And the other one is going to be for the password, so site underscore password. So these things here, this, and this must correspond to whatever you have placed inside this name. So name, yeah, right. So if I go back here, I save it, whatever I'm going to type here will be now attached to it, but we need to save it somewhere, right? So let's build our database aspect. So I'll just go back again for the database. So from Flask underscore SQLAlchemy, I'm going to import my SQLAlchemy. Yeah. and I have to initialize it one. So I have to first of all configure where I'm going to store these particular details. So in this case, it's going to be stored. You just have to give the SQL the URL to SQLAlchemy. I spell al database URI. So data can spell database URI. Now have to specify, okay, this is going to be stored. You can use any database from here, right? You can use Postgres, MySQL, but for our app, let's use SQLite. Okay, and then data.db, right? That's where you are storing it. Then you also need to configure our app with a secret key. So this is going to be this option here. So secret key. Let's give it a simple secret. So this is secret. Yeah, don't use this one. Yeah, in production, don't use this one. And now we need to initialize our database. So db is going to be my SQLAlchemy. Now passing my Flask app. So now the database has been initialized. We also need to build our models where the data is going to be, like the model or the schema for our database, right? For our data. So in that case, it's going to be my class. Then I'm going to call it as password manager. Then this one is going to inherit from the DB model, right? And then from there, we can now build our class. The first one, we need an ID to make it easy for us to have a primary key. And I'm going to go with db.column. Then I'm going to pass in db.integer, right? Which in this case, the integer is going to be our primary key. Let's set that one to true. Perfect, right? Then I'll do the same thing. I'll repeat it for the next one, for the email and the rest. The same thing. So we have, as you can see, we have the ID, which is going to be the primary key. We have the email, we have the site URL, site password, right? And then this is something very basic. Now we have gotten our database schema. We need to initialize and create this particular table. In case you want to change the name of the table to something, you just have to come back here and then do __ table, right? Then just give it the name for the table, right? Just give it a name, but let's inherit from the one and the password manager. So I'll go back here and now let's initialize it. So we can open another place into the same place. So J documents, JCharisTech, July tutorial, then into my password app here, and I'm going to open with Python. Then we have, as you can see, there it is not here, there's no database here, right? So if I go it from my app, import db, going to import db, it's going to give us an error, but it's still going to work because we are not tracking it, right? We are not tracking the modification. This is set to true by default, so we need to set it to false, right? But you can just leave it, it's going to work. Then db.create _all, it's going to create everything there. So since there's no error, that means it has been created. If I go back here and I check it out, I say we have our database created here, right? Perfect. So let's go back again. Since we have created a database, we can now store data into our database. So how do we do that? So I'll come back here and now we're going to store it. So let's create a variable called password details, and I'm going to put everything inside my password manager class. So I'm going to put the email, let's go to email, the password or the site URL is equal to the site URL, and then the password, so site password, go to site password, right? So I go back here, you can see it well, right? The same thing. So that is it. So you have put everything there. Now we need to commit it to our database. So db.session.add, let's add this new password there. Then db.session.commit. We're just going to save it there, right? And now I can just redirect back. So redirect to my main route, which is the index route. So this route here. So I have to return redirect. So return redirect. So no more. You don't need this one anymore, right? Perfect. So once the person enters the details, everything is going to be stored and then committed to our database, and now we're going to be redirected back. So in redirecting back, we want to get the list there. So how do we do that? So we can just call that my password list, which in this case is going to be my password manager .query.all. So this is going to bring everything there, and now I can just pass it in. So let's go to password list is equal to password list. Then for me to see this, I have to go back to the index.html file, and now I can put it somewhere. So let's put it here. Let's create another div. So let's put a horizontal bar here. Then let's go with this option. So div class container. We'll be putting a table. So container. You can actually put a table, but let's make it very simple. So to be able to see everything, I'll just go back with the Jinja option. So this is going to be my option here. And now I can just go back with so this is Jinja format templating. So anytime you put the curly bracket and then the percent, that means that you want to put something that's like a function, right? So in that case, it's going to be say for for item in my password list, right? Then in case I want to actually display the results, I'll now go with the Jinja plain. So I can now say, okay, get the item.email. You want to get only the email. Let's do the same thing for the rest. Let's go for the email and then for the password. So let's go for the site URL, right? And now we can close it. Let's go back again for the site password. Then let's close the entire stuff with this option. So percent, we are going to close it with N4. So let's save it, and hopefully there is no error here. There's no errors here, so that means everything is working. I'll go back here, refresh. There's no error. Now let's add in some titles. For example, 1, the site example.com, password 1 2 3 4 5. If I click on add, we're going to see the result here. So let's click on add. So now the result is here. I can now put an example. So test2@gmail.com. Then let's go to test.com. Then the password is 1 here. If I click on add, you're going to see that has been added, right? Very nice. So our app is working. So we have been able to do the first part of the app, which is the create and then read. So we have been able to create, to add data to our database, read it. That is what we are showing here, right? But this is not the best. We need to put this one inside the table, and we need to hide these things so that the people cannot see it. So how do we do that? So I'll go back again to the app section that we have. Hopefully everything is working as expected. What I want to do is that now I want to work on the delete aspect, right? So that is the next option. We need to work on the update and delete. So how do you work on the update and delete? So I'm just going to go back again to the delete is simple. I'm going to create a simple function or a simple button to help us with our deleting, right, of whatever thing we want to do. So I'll come back here and create a simple button. So let's create a button. So href, right, and this is going to take in some arguments. So I'll be doing a simple route like this option here. So backslash. So you want to delete, so delete. Then slash going to put in an ID, right? So the particular ID that you want to put. So remember that we were also storing the ID here. So this is what we're using, which is unique, as a primary key to delete a particular value. So the same thing, I'm going to pass in my Jinja option here. Then this is going to be my item dot ID, right? And now if I click on this button, so this class button, btn, yes, delete is always danger. Yeah, perfect. So let's save it, go back. We need to specify that that type is, yeah, it's not working as expected, so I have to put in my option here. It's going to be delete. I have to close this one with backslash. If I save it, I come back here. Now we have the delete option here. So if I expand it, you have delete here and delete here, right? Okay. We can put it into a table so that it becomes nicer. Or we can put it inside a list. So let's put it inside a list. So let's put inside a table, right, to make it better. So I'll just put inside a simple table. Yeah, and then every table has a head. So T head, and then inside this T head we can just put the T yeah, you can put in these details there, right? That is going to be something later, but let's make it like this. So I'll work on this, we'll work on that one later to save us time. Okay, so that is for the delete. Let's create another one for the update. So I'll copy the same thing here. So this is going to be for the update in case I want to update something. So update, we can call it as green, so success, or yeah, success will be good. Update. I save it now and I come back. Now we have two colors, right? So one to delete, one to update. Perfect. And the same idea. Now how do we work on it? So I have to go back to the backend and let's work on the delete option. So this is the delete details. So since it's receiving the ID from here, we also need to pass that ID here. So backslash, then this is going to be the option, so it's going to be an integer. Then this is going to be the ID that we are passing. That is all, right? And I'll pass in this ID here. So in case I want to delete the ID, I'll just go back again, and now we can actually delete it in a very simple way. So let's call this, okay, new details to delete, something like that. Delete. I can now put in the password manager dot query. We want to get the value. So query dot get or 404, get or return 404, that is in case it doesn't find it, that particular ID, right? So get or return 404. So that is the basic understanding behind that, right? That is the first one. Now after that we need to commit it. So after you have deleted it or gotten that particular value, we can now delete it, right? Or make some changes, effect the change. So now I'm going to say db.session, when I can just go with .delete. Now pass in the particular new details to delete, and now db.commit. Then db.session or db.commit, session.commit. Then from there I can now redirect. So redirect back to the main page. Else if there is nothing, if there's an error, I want you to tell me that there was an error. So let's go return, say there was an error deleting details. Right, if I save it now, we have gotten the delete option. So let's try it out. I'll come back here, you can see we have 4 here. If I click on delete, now it has been deleted, right, and it has been redirected back. If I click on delete, it has been deleted. So let's add another one. So this example, the password, click on this. Now it has been added, so I can now delete it, right, this option. So the delete option of this, which is the delete, is working. So what is left is the update. Let's see how to update it. So now I'll go back again to the update option. So we will be using whatever thing the person typed here. If the person click on the update, you're going to redirect the person to this page here. So I'll copy this entire stuff here and then paste it here, right? Then I'll take off this. We don't need this one anymore. Okay. So when the person types in something or click on the button, you're going to be redirected to here, right? So when we redirect here, you're going to paste in all the values there. So let's work on it. So I'll come back here, just like the same thing we did here. We are using the ID, the primary key, which is very important in this case. That's why the IDs are unique. Yeah, and I'll pass in it here. So let's see how to make the update. So to make an update is very simple. We say, okay, if we need to first of all get the value, right, that you want to update. So let's call it as, let's say, my details. Then I can just come back here and say, okay, this is the password manager dot query dot get or return for passing the ID. We have gotten a particular thing that we want to update. So let's say new or updated details, right? I'll be back in a moment. Yeah, so perfect. So we have gotten that particular value. Now we want to update it. So we're going to say that, okay, if the request, just as we did above, did you see what I typed? If request.method is equal to post, then we want to make some update, right? So how do we do that? So you can easily pick this particular one. There are 2 ways we can do that. You can get this entire stuff we have, whatever thing we have here, so this password manager, then you can just go with update, then you pass in a dictionary of the word you want to update. So let's say the email, that right from the form. So in that case, it's going to be so request dot form, then the email, right? This is one of the ways, but this is one way you can also do that, right? But let's go with a simple approach. Since we already have it here, we can just go with my update details dot email. Then I'm going to equate it to the request.form, then email. So this request.form.email is coming from here. It is coming from the same email class. So the email, site name, site URL, site password from this name here, right? At this time, it's no more update, it is now update, right? And can even pass in the URL, right? The particular URL there, which is going to be the ID that we are passing, right? So we'll be working on that later. So I'll come back again. Perfect. So we do the same thing for the rest. So 1, 2. So this is going to be for the site URL. So site URL, and then this is going to be for the site password. Apologies for the noise hearing behind. Perfect. That is the basic understanding. So once we are done with that, we can now commit it. So we can say, okay, if everything is done, I want you to do is a try. You can just go without a try, except can just go without it, right? I just go say, okay, db dot session dot commit, right? Don't need to add anymore, we are just committing because the change has been made. And then if there's an error, if there's no error, I want you to redirect us back to the main page, right? Else, if there's an error, except if there's an error, I want you to tell me the error, so return. So there was an error updating password details, something like that. Then this one will go off because we don't need this one anymore. That's the basic understanding, right? So this is how to update our stuff, right? Then we can now return the entire stuff. So return render template, the update option, HTML, right? So that's the basic understanding behind what you have done for the update, right? So since it's using a post method, we have to pass in those methods here, which in this case, in our case, is going to be this. So we have my post method. So let's go with the get, because we can redirect back again, and then the post. Perfect. So this is for the updates, right? So let's go back and check it out. Come back here. We need to be able to get these values in the right places, so that if the person comes here and click on update, it has been redirected. As you can see, it has been redirected to 1, but the details are not here. So you have to put these details there, right? So I have to go back again, and then inside the placeholder, you can just tick off the placeholder. You can just even put it there. Inside this particular place here, you can now go with the value. Value is equal to then the item. So let's go with the Jinja. Then the item dot something. So it can be password list or something, or we can call it as item dot something, or we can call it, let's call it as password. You can give it any name that you want, right? So password list, it can be an item, it can be something else, right? So let's call this item. Item is better. Dot. Then email, for site URL, and then for site password. Right. So if I save it, we need to pass this item. So I have to go back again to the back end here. So whatever terminal is being passed in, which is this update details, I have to copy this one and then send it here. So this call it as to say update details is equal to items, but let's call it update details, and let's go back here and change this one from item to item. Let's change it to update details. Yeah, so this update details is coming from here, this one here. Let's go back and refresh. Now instead we have our results here, right? Perfect. If I go back again and I add another one, so let's add another one. So let's add the test2 test.com, the password. So add, we have it here. Now I can update, we have it here, right? And if I change this one to password 2 to password test, I go with add, that's request not found. So let's see why. Because the reason not found is that for our route, we need to also pass in that particular route for the ID. So in that case, it's going to be the same thing we had here. Copy this and change this one to the ID, so that it affects those changes. If I go back, fresh, test, add. Now the changes have been made. You can see that we have the test here that's been affected here, right? Very nice. Now the next option is we need to hide this one. So how do we hide this particular one? We have seen how to do the create, read, update, delete. Now let's see how to add the hiding of the password, right? how do we hide it so that the person can unhide or hide? So it's very simple. I'll go back again to here, and then from here I can now simply make it like this. I'm going to change it from, you add a table later, but I want you to see the logic first. So this is going to be my input, then this is going to be now password, right? Then just like we did above, I'm going to take off this, right? So this is going to be the value, then I'm going to close. Yeah. So if I save it and I come back here, if I refresh it, and now that one is in a format of stuff like this, right? Yeah, right. So now I can hide or not hide it. So how do I unhide it? So that is where I'll pass in another ID. So let's give it an ID. Let's call it as per the name of that ID. So if I copy this one here, so this is going to be, the reason I'm doing this is that if I, let's go with this option so that you see what I mean. Without this, now let's give it an ID, like let's say ID to PID, something like that, right? That's the name of the ID. Now for you to work, I'll just go back down and I'm going to create a script or JavaScript option. Then I'm going to add a function. So the function is going to be that if I click on a button, it's going to do that particular task. So let's add that particular button. So this is going to be my button. The button is going to be a type, a particular type. It can be a type of button, or you can just give it like this on click. Where is it? Here is it. Yeah. Let's give it also a class of btn. Yeah, let's make it primary, and then let's go to okay, show password. Now I'm going to create a function called my function, which is not going to take any argument. So once the person click on that function, call my function, this is my function this is my function. It's going to do something, right? And as you can see, the type here is pass. Like if I change the type to test, and I go back and I refresh, now it is test, you can see it. But if I change the type here from here to pass word, you can't see it. So what we want to do is that we want to make sure that if we click on this particular button, it's going to change the type from pass to test. That is the basic understanding behind the function you are writing here, right? X can be any value, can give it any name. This is not the best way of naming it here anyway, so let's call it as mbtn, right, for my button, something like that. Then I'm going to say okay, document dot get element by ID. Yeah, get element by ID. I'm passing that particular ID. So the ID there is PID, which is referring to this ID here. Where is it? Here, this PID. Yeah, right? We're going to get that particular one. So if you get that ID, right, and then from there, you can say that okay, if the btn, but it's not good for you to call it btn. Yeah, let's call it x. So if x is a condition, s dot type is equal to password, right? Then I want you to change it from there to this option. keyboard. Don't worry, we'll fix it. Yep. If that is the case, I want you to change it to S-type. Is equal to test. Right. So you get the point. That's the basic understanding. Then I have to close this one here. Else, do the other stuff, which is going to be yeah. See, what the reason I'm doing that is because of my mouse, of my keyboard. It's a different language altogether. I'm trying to get adapted to it. Then set it back to the initial one. That is it. We are done with our function and everything works. So this one closes here, this one closes here, this one closes here. Perfect. I've created our simple function. Let's save it and see if the function works. So if I go back here, let's refresh. If I click on this, so now it's showing here, right? As you can see, if I click on it, it's showing it, right? But this is not being affected. The reason it's not being affected is that we gave the ID to only that particular class, but we want to make it for everyone. So in order to do that, you just have to change this one from this, and then use the same thing we did here, and then pass it here. So now this time it's not going to be the password, it's going to be the ID. Right, so now every one of them is different. So if I refresh it and I click on show password, it's not working. The reason is that we need to also pass a particular function here. So let's go to PID. So this PID function is going to be passed here. So I need to pass that particular PID, which is this one. Now this function is having an argument. So the idea is that you are, anytime I click on this function, it's picking that particular ID, that unique ID, right? Then it's going to pass that ID as the argument. Then it's going to check it here, right? So this is now no more going to be this, it's going to be that particular ID being passed, and now it's going to make the changes. So let's expand it. If I click on show, it's working. Show is working, right? This is not nice, but I hope you get the point. So what I have to do is I just have to add something here for the button. Let's add a break. Yeah, so you can see how you have the password here. You need to also add another break, but you make it beautiful later, right? So you have gotten a point. So the app works perfectly well. We can update, we can go back, we can show password, everything is working as expected. Now we need to work on the export, and then we'll beautify it later. So let's work on the exporting. So I'll go back again for the export route, exporting the result. So it's very simple. So I'll copy and paste the code to save us time because we are spending a lot of time. So we do that, I'm just going to import and paste in this. So I put in the CSV to help us write a CSV time to create timestamp, and I'll go back again and create the export. So we're going to open a file called dam.csv. Then we're going to write the values there, the ID, the email, the site URL, site password as the row header. Then I'm going to look through the password manager, which is this one here, write everything on our file, and then I'm going to send it over so that the person can download with the send file. So this send file is coming from Flask here. So I have to import send file. Here we can send file. We are sending it as attachment with this particular name, and we are giving it a timestamp here, right? Perfect. So we need to create this particular route. So I just go back to the main page here, and now I can just create a simple button. So let's use some of these buttons here. Copy this button. Let's call it as a spot. out this, and then let's call it as export. So if I save it, I come back here, refresh, we're going to have our button to export here. So if I click on it, so now it has opened it quickly for us, and go to save it. If I open it with any text editor, so our result is there, right? So I've been able to see how to work with the exporting. You can also add some other features of encryption of the password to it as you want, but that is going to be something else. Using Venv is symmetric cryptography, right? Which you can also do that. That is going to be an assignment for you. So thank you for watching this tutorial. So let's beautify this particular place and beautify the update. So I'll leave the code for the notification below so that I can also check it out. So thank you for watching. See you in the next session. Stay blessed. In case you have any question or contribution, you can let me know. So the basic idea is that you have seen how to build the app that applies create, read, update, delete, and then we had a route. We created a database using Flask SQL, a place to read. So this is going to be the read option, and then for the create, we use a simple option here to create, then delete, and then update, and then we had another one to export it. So thank you for watching. See you in the session. Stay blessed. Bye.